My name is David McGinnis, and this is the story of an old friend of mine whom I ran into by chance in the emergency room of a hospital. I was walking with my 2-year-old daughter in my arms and approached her to say hello. "Hi, Susan. Long time no see." She replied, "Dave, you're here. It's a small world, isn't it?" I responded, "Indeed. How have you been?" Since I had last seen her about 8 years ago, she had gained a lot of weight. She didn't look happy. The smile I remembered from our school and college days was gone. She said, "How could you guess? Brian and I got divorced a couple of years ago. His new wife considers any contact with me or our children a personal insult. I get alimony from his lawyer. He hasn't seen his kids in over a year. Now everyone calls me Sue. How are you?" I remembered that when we were students, her high school friends called her Susan, and her college friends called her Sue. I explained, "Professionally, everything is great. Personally, not so much. I just got divorced from my second wife." She asked, "Sounds like you're not doing any better than I am. What happened to Annie?" I continued, "We got married and had a daughter, but she died in a car accident." She replied, "I'm so sorry about Annie. Was she your daughter?" I replied, "No. Brenda is my second wife's daughter. As far as I know, she's somewhere in South America with her current boyfriend." She asked, "So you have 2 daughters and no wife?" I replied, "Yes. My older daughter lives with Consuela, my housekeeper and nanny. She's staying over tonight." She said, "My boyfriend takes care of my 4 other children. Under duress, I might add." I asked, "So you had 3 children with Brian and 2 with Eddie?" She replied, "Yes, that's right. What do you do now?" I replied, "I teach math at a state university. What about you?" She said, "I teach little kids at the local elementary school and am trying to finish my master's degree at the state university." The nurse called my daughter. I said, "That's us. Give me your number and we'll have coffee sometime on campus." We exchanged numbers, but I never saw her again. The school district where Susan and I attended elementary and middle school had a 4-tiered education system. Grades K through 4 were elementary, 5 through 6 were intermediate, 7 through 8 were middle, and 9 through 12 were senior. Each level had its own student zone. Susan and I went to different elementary schools, but then we went to the same middle and high schools. We were very good friends in middle and high school. We even went on a few dates in middle school. In high school, she caught the attention of Eddie Mason, the most popular guy in our class and the starting quarterback on the football team. Susan and Eddie got married right after school. Eddie went to college with us, but decided to work for a few years and then go back to college. In 2 years, he got Susan pregnant twice. During her second pregnancy, he fell in love with one of the many waitresses he was sleeping with and decided he was no longer interested in Susan or their children. As far as I know, he never took an interest in the children or paid the child support he was ordered to pay by the court. When Susan divorced Eddie, I was in a relationship with Annie, my first wife. She started dating Brian, a rich guy from a fraternity, and I lost touch with her as she became preoccupied with Brian, his family, and everything associated with the fraternity. She was my best friend in high school, but after she got involved with Eddie, we didn't spend much time together. When she finally got tired of Eddie's romantic escapades, I was involved with Annie. Although I had always liked her, we never had a serious romantic relationship. A couple of months after we met in the emergency room, I ran into her by chance while crossing campus late one afternoon, and we finally had the cup of coffee we had promised each other. She told me she didn't know what to do. She and Bill, her current roommate, weren't getting along. Their current arrangement was that instead of looking for a job, he got room and board and other benefits of living with Susan in exchange for watching her children while she taught or studied. In addition to room and board, she gave him money for pocket expenses, which was a source of friction between them. He wanted more, and she didn't see how she could afford it. Although she had gained 20 pounds since we were in college, she was still an attractive woman. I told her she could probably find someone better than Bill, whom I considered a lazy bum, although taking care of 5 children is no easy task. What prevented her from leaving Bill was the high cost of childcare. I didn't have a good solution. I suggested she look for a cooperative daycare where she could work in exchange for childcare. She said she had already looked, but the problem was that she didn't have enough hours to pay for childcare for 5 children. Her current plan was to somehow hold out until the end of the semester and then leave Bill. She couldn't take any more classes until she found a better solution to her problems. We started meeting at the student union every Thursday for coffee, and I knew about her problems with Bill. I went on dates and to clubs, but nothing interesting was happening in my life. Finally, the end of the semester arrived. Sue and Bill broke up, and I had my first real date with her, not counting the movie at school. We went out to dinner, then had a few drinks and danced, and then I drove her home. I paid her babysitter, including a tip, because I knew it would be easier for me. I sat on her couch while she made coffee. Then she joined me on the couch, and I kissed her. I don't know if it was mutual attraction or just mutual arousal. It was my first time in weeks, and her husband Bill was away for the weekend. When I got to second base, she suggested we go to the bedroom. Was it worth waiting 15 years? I don't know, but it was very good. We stood by the bed, undressed each other, kissed. I felt a very strong connection with Sue, which I really didn't expect. It was a little like the first time Annie and I were together. Ramona, my second wife, was very sexy, but with her it was completely different. Sue was a little overweight, but that didn't bother me. She was passionate, a real woman, and that was more than enough for me. I didn't know her body, but I was always a quick learner. When her spasms subsided, she opened her eyes, looked at my face and said, "You're staying, right?" I replied, "Let me check." I called Consuela. I barely got the words out before she interrupted me. I could see her smiling as she checked. "You want me to stay longer? I told my husband that I might not sleep until morning. Is your lady nice?" I replied, with Sue listening, "She's fantastic, Consuela." Her last remark was, "Try to be home by 8 in the morning. I have to make breakfast for the family and then go to church." I agreed, "Okay, Consuela," and hung up. Sue asked, "Do you really think I'm fantastic?" I replied, "No, probably not. I think you're better than fantastic. I just didn't want Consuela to get jealous." We lay there kissing and cuddling, and then fell asleep. We woke up in the middle of the night and made sure everything was okay. Everything was fine, and the extra check we did the next morning also came back positive. Sue and I hurriedly drank a cup of coffee, and then I had to leave for work to relieve Consuela. When I returned from the park where I had dropped off Alicia and Brenda, I called Sue to see what she was up to. She said she was trying to recover from last night. We agreed to meet on Tuesday evening. Consuela was watching my children, and I asked her if she could watch the other 5. She said that 7 children were more work than 5, and I agreed. We agreed on an extra $5 an hour. I called Sue and told her about my plan. She said it was a great idea. Luckily, my SUV has 8 seats, so I was able to drive her and the 5 kids to my house. The younger kids, Dan, April, and Jimmy, were thrilled, and the older ones weren't as happy, but they didn't argue. The main thing was that they could bring their computers and cell phones with them. Sue and I watched a movie, then went over to her place to chat for a while. It was still early enough that Consuela wasn't worried. We dropped Consuela off and loaded all the kids into the SUV, with Sue holding the youngest in her arms. Consuela told me that all the kids got along really well, so Sue and I planned a day at the park on Saturday with a sleepover at my place. The park was a great place to walk with the kids, with lots of picnic tables and food stands, as well as a city zoo and a children's train, although Sue and I managed to squeeze into one of the seats. By the end of the day, everyone had become friends, and even Sue's eldest daughter, Gloria, admitted that she had had a good time, although she had been a little wary at first. With Consuela's help and a few weekend sleepovers, Sue and I managed to carve out some adult time 3 or 4 times a week. A few months later, I proposed, and 6 months after that, we were married. Sue asked me if I wanted to have children with her, and I said, yes, maybe 2, but no more than 3. We ended up having 3, and I had a vasectomy, so there would be no surprises in the future. We had a busy but happy life. It seemed like the kids were always going to 3 different schools, plus we had to take care of the youngest. Sue continued teaching, and we had a wonderful life centered around our 12 children. This continued until Mark started kindergarten. Sue decided she wanted to become a school principal and felt that a master's degree would be the pinnacle of her career. She continued teaching, but attended graduate courses until 5 or 6 in the evening. This was fine because Consuela was still working for us and was home when the children came home from their various schools. 3 of our children were in elementary school, and the 2 older ones were in high school. Brenda, Dan, and April were in college, and Gloria and Janet had already graduated from college, gotten married, and Gloria had recently given birth to our first grandchild. At first, everything seemed normal in graduate school, but then it became harder and harder for Sue. She started staying late at the university to study until late at night. Sometimes she was delayed by graduate student events, but I saw her less and less. She asked me to get up early in the morning, make breakfast, and send the children to school so she could sleep. Sometimes she didn't come home until 10 o'clock at night. Even then, she was often too tired to play adult games. We still made love on weekends, but even that was threatened by periodic study groups and project meetings on Saturdays. At 44, she looked gorgeous. When I met her in the emergency room, she weighed about 20 pounds more than she did in college. By the time we got married, she had lost about half that weight. When we started having children, she tried to get back to her college weight after each pregnancy. There was nothing wrong with her appearance. I had gained a few pounds, less than 10, so I still looked pretty good. I did some stretching exercises before work. After work, I often played tennis until Consuelo went home at 7 in the evening. I started to get a little worried. Not only was Sue spending less time with me, but the quality of that time was deteriorating. I tried to show interest in what she was doing at university, but she didn't seem to want to talk about it. She showed no interest in current events. She had never been interested in my work, and now she seemed even less so. I felt very uncomfortable, but in the end, I decided to grit my teeth and hire a private investigator. I justified it to myself by saying that it would strengthen our relationship, since my fears were making me doubt its strength. Unfortunately, the more than $10,000 I paid the private investigator for 2 weeks of surveillance paid off. The detective found no direct evidence of infidelity, but he did uncover many suspicious facts. It turned out that she was spending 10 to 15 hours a week at the home of one of her professors. This man had taught her a couple of courses, but they had no academic connection during the current semester. I didn't know what to do. Since there was no evidence that she was unfit to be a mother, she would most likely get primary custody of the children in a divorce. I still loved her and wanted her back. I wondered if I confronted her. Would she give up her lover? I didn't know the answer to that question, but after consulting with a family lawyer, I decided it was worth a try. I could at least retain custody of the youngest child, and I thought I had a good relationship with the 5 older children, who were already adults. Nevertheless, I really didn't want to break up the family, even if the love of my life was a fickle cheater. I decided to talk to her on Saturday morning. After breakfast, I asked her to talk heart to heart. She seemed a little worried, but not enough to think about divorce. I began, "Sue, I know you've been seeing Dr. Waddington." She clearly wasn't expecting this, but now she looked even more concerned. "What are you talking about, Dave?" I replied, "I'm talking about the 10 to 15 hours a week you spend at Waddington's house." She replied, "Dave, I plan to hire him as my research consultant." I had to say, "Please, Susan, don't treat me like an idiot. If you respect me that much, then I think it's over between us." She started crying. I'm so stupid. I'm an idiot. He seduced me when I was vulnerable, but since then I've been just as guilty as he is. I'm sorry, Dave. You've been the best husband. I asked, "Are you going to continue seeing him?" She seemed to think about it before answering. "I don't know. I was hoping he would be my research advisor." I told her, "I don't like being a cuckold. If you want to continue seeing him, we'll have to get a divorce." She looked at me with a sternness I had never seen her look at anyone before. After a while, she said, somewhat condescendingly, "Dave, let's talk about this like adults." I replied, "Sure. But the only thing worse than being a cuckold is when your wife tells you she wants to continue." She continued, "What's your problem, Dave? Haven't I been a wife to you in every way?" I replied, "I don't want to say this, but you cheated on me, lied to me about it, and basically turned our marriage into a farce. Now you want to continue. I thought I married the best woman in the world, and now I find out that my feelings aren't mutual. I'm sorry I disappointed you." She said, "I really don't understand what you're talking about. I thought we had great sex over the last few months. Don't you agree?" I replied, "I think we're talking about two different worlds. In your world, cheating is okay. In mine, it's not. For me, that's an irreconcilable difference." She continued, "I can't believe you're so narrow-minded. Lots of men like to share their wives. I just think you're stubborn." I said to her, "If you marry Wallington, do you think he'll like you sleeping with other men?" She replied, "1, I don't want to marry Wallington. 2, I love you and want to stay married to you. 3, all I want from Wallington in the long run is my master's degree. Can't you see that he's not a threat to our relationship? Once I get my degree, he'll be history." I explained, "If the choice is between a master's degree and sex with Wallington, I choose the master's degree." She was furious. "I can't talk to you. I'll do anything to get my master's degree." I told her, "I'll do anything not to have a cheating wife." Her last response was, "Whatever you want, Dave." I replied, "That's what you'll get." On Monday afternoon, my new family lawyer explained the situation to me. I would most likely lose custody of my children, half of my assets, and most of my future income. The only thing that was not completely unacceptable to me was losing half of my assets. She told me that we might be able to work something out regarding her master's degree that would allow us to retain joint custody of the children and reduce the amount of alimony and child support until Sue finished her master's degree, but after that, we would most likely have problems. I decided to take the bull by the horns and talk to Sue directly. While she was in graduate school, we would continue to live together but in separate bedrooms. Consuela and I would bear the brunt of the child care while Sue got her precious master's degree. Given her expected salary increase, my lawyer believed that I would be able to avoid separate support and possibly reduce the amount of child support. Although state law did not recognize legal separation, we signed a formal separation agreement based on contract law rather than marriage law. I resisted the temptations Sue put in front of me. She teased me that I was deceiving myself by not fulfilling my marital obligations. She told me that I was better than Woolsington, even though she didn't want to break up with him. She even told me that Woolsington was so bad that she would probably have to find another lover if I couldn't satisfy her. I had never been a big fan of club life, but I adapted and became quite skilled at meeting women. I don't know if Sue followed through on her threats. I believed she was exaggerating Woolsington's shortcomings in bed. I remained polite and even joked with her sometimes, though we mostly talked about our children's accomplishments. We managed to maintain a relationship based mainly on our 3 children, who were still living with us. We had dinner together at home or at fast food restaurants chosen by the children. We also spent time together as a family, and even went on overnight trips. On these trips, we booked 2 rooms. I stayed with William and Mark, and Sue stayed with Ellen. I continued to sleep in the guest room and resisted her attempts to engage in intimacy. Occasionally, I slept with the club queen, either at a motel or at her home. Sue apparently continued her relationship with Wallington 3 or 4 times a week, but I didn't care. Even though she continued to see Wallington, I think she believed we were still married, just temporarily suspending physical intimacy. Finally, after 3.5 years of incomplete studies and continuing her affair with Wallington, she received her long-awaited master's degree. All 10 children and all 3 grandchildren were at her graduation, except for Janet's first child, who was still in the womb. At the celebratory dinner for 15, Sue pulled me aside and told me I could stop acting like a jerk because it was over between her and Wallington. I thanked her but declined, saying I preferred faithful spouses, and that was what I was looking for. I could see she wanted to curse me, but decided that a nice restaurant was no place for such things. I thought it would be gentlemanly not to file for divorce until the next day. That evening, after the 3 of us had gone to bed, I told her that I was leaving her and that Consuela would be my housekeeper in my new home. I told her that Consuela would continue to work for her from 3 to 6 on weekdays, at least until our divorce was final. She didn't take it well. "Oh my God, Dave, you're really kicking me out. I thought you'd come to your senses eventually." I explained, "Sue, I made it clear from the moment I found out about your relationship with Waddleson that continuing that relationship was unacceptable to me. How did you think I would react to you sleeping with him for over 2 years?" She cried. "Dave, I thought our years together meant more to you." I replied, "Susan, I thought the same thing about you, but experience has taught me that it doesn't mean anything." She began to sob. "Dave, I always thought we could work through this. Can't we do something other than get a divorce?" I had to tell her the truth. "Susan, I've been thinking about this for over 2 years. I don't see any other way out." She hugged me. I tensed up. "Dave, all I've been thinking about is my master's degree. You've turned my joy into ashes. I'll do anything to get us back together." I couldn't help her. "Sue, we have 3 children to raise. Besides, I think it's time to talk to the lawyers." I couldn't help feeling her pain. "Dave, I don't need a lawyer. I need you." I told her, "You didn't seem too concerned about it for the last 2 years. Was Waddington the only one you slept with?" She replied, "Waddington. And as I told you, I only continued the relationship because he was my research advisor." I asked, "Surely he wasn't your only research advisor?" She replied, "Changing advisors is not encouraged." I explained, "That's not my problem. I just wanted you to consider our marriage a little more important." She replied, "You do understand that graduate school has been my dream for many years, right?" I explained, "I'm sorry that was more important than our marriage." She replied, "Graduate school lasted 3 years and our marriage was forever." I told her, "Yes, I thought so too." She cried as if her heart was broken. "I knew you were angry about my affair with Waddington, but I thought you would get over it. You're right. That damn master's degree wasn't worth destroying our marriage. Yesterday I was so happy to finally achieve my goal. I thought you would be proud of me, proud of your wife. I got it all wrong, didn't I?" I said from the bottom of my heart, "I can see you're upset. I was upset when I found out you cheated on me. We had a chance to start over then. But that ship has sailed. I'm sorry you didn't believe me when I said I couldn't let you continue your relationship with Wendelson." Finally, she heard me. "Damn it, Dave! His name is Waddington." I said, "Waddington is the bastard who destroyed our marriage." She said, "It's over and there's nothing I can do?" I replied calmly, "Nothing." She just couldn't let it go. "It seems like I broke your heart a few years ago. Now it's my turn." I agreed. "It seems that way." She explained, "I thought that when you continued to live with me, but in separate beds, you would come back to me when I promised that Waddington was in the past." I apologized. "I'm sorry you thought that. I thought I made myself perfectly clear." She said quietly, "Perfectly." I said, "I'm sorry, Sue, but I have to go." She replied, "Go to hell, damn it, go to hell." I went upstairs, finished packing, and left. The next time I saw her was on Saturday, when she agreed to let me take the 3 children who were still at home to the zoo. When I brought them back, she said she would like me to stay for dinner, and we talked. She heated up a frozen pizza, which the children were happy with, although it wasn't my choice. Dinner was quite pleasant, with the kids telling Sue about all the animals they had seen at the zoo. I helped her put the kids to bed, and then we went back to the dining room for the talk she had asked for. She said to me, "I got caught up in my master's degree and didn't pay attention to my marriage. I know it hurt you, and of course it hurt me. I think the most important thing for me is that I regret the pain I caused you. I think I'm paying a terrible price for what I did, but it's all my fault. You were right when you told me what the consequences would be, but I didn't take your warning seriously. If you had been a worse husband, I would have taken your warning more seriously. Because you were such a good husband, I thought you would forgive and forget. If I could, I would fix everything, but some things don't give you a second chance. Thank you for listening to me. I know I'm going to miss you for a very long time. That's all I wanted to say." I replied, "I'm sorry too. Good night, Sue." I had nothing to say or do. She hugged me and kissed me on the cheek. I turned and walked away. Part of me wanted to go back and make things right, but the pain was too strong. I loved her and lost her, and there was no way back to what we had. In the end, I was able to forgive her, but I will never forget the pain I felt when I found out about her affair, and the pain that stayed with me for 2 years while she continued her affair. Some things are meant to be, and some things are not. Unfortunately, the path to knowledge is often difficult. I don't regret reuniting with Sue and marrying her. She gave me 12 happy years, 3 wonderful children, and many fond memories. However, I thought she was my one true love, and it was devastating to learn that wasn't the case. It was something we were never able to recover from.